Hello, my name is Michael Leverett. I'm an assistive technology practitioner with Disability Connections, the Middle Georgia Center for Independent Living, and you're watching a DVD-ROM regarding the program Access Church Life. I want to welcome you. This DVD-ROM is a very, very powerful tool to help you and your congregation to include people with disabilities. Now, if you're a student of the Bible, I think you will notice that people with disabilities are throughout, including Moses, who had issues with speech. Many of the people that Jesus reached out to and touched and worked with were people with disabilities. So I think it's really important that our churches not necessarily serve people with disabilities, that would be great, but to include people, to allow people with disabilities the ability and the opportunity to come and worship. Now, before we get started, let me explain a couple things about this DVD. Over on this side, you will see something that starts with A and a B and C. Awareness, barriers, and communication. And if you click on, which you don't need to right now, let this finish first, but when you first click on A, it will open up and you'll see different modules under awareness. Click on B, barriers, it will open up a long list of different modules, and C, communication, that will bring up some more. Now these modules are each individual training opportunities, and each time you click on them, you will find, every time you click on it, the word assess and modify will come up on the screen. So you have to make a decision. What am I about to watch and why am I clicking on that? Well, it's very helpful. Number one, if you haven't decided and you haven't got into the process of making changes in the church and you're not sure what the changes are, you can click on assess. So it's basically taking the survey, which you can click on down at the bottom of the screen to open up the survey, and you can print it out. It looks just like this. And this training program is every single question in the exact same order that you'll find on the survey. So every button that you hit on the assess part will actually help you go through and do this assessment on your church. And I would highly recommend that you do that before you even dive into the modification part. And then once you get into the modification part, you'll see diagrams, interviews, pictures, and some words from me throughout this entire DVD-ROM about modifying that particular issue. Now, one thing I want you to understand, that a lot of our information is based on the ADA. Now, most churches are not bound by the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and there's an architectural guidelines, ADAC. Only through maybe local codes, if you're building new buildings, that it covers your church. But it was how the ADA came about was a lot of push, a lot of influence, and a lot of input from people with disabilities. In the same way, this DVD-ROM has got a lot of input from people with disabilities. So the ADA is not just something that the government has created to make it harder for us to do things. Really, it's really common sense things that can help you and your church, especially when you're building new or if you're making modifications. They're great guidelines, and so we use the ADA throughout this DVD-ROM that will be helpful to you. I just want to share one thing before we get started. And I mentioned that it was real important that we accept people with disabilities, and that Jesus was very open and touched and worked and ministered to and ministered with people with disabilities. And when it comes to eliminating barriers in your church, and I know that those are hard things to go through sometimes, and sometimes we meet on committees, and I've been on them, and it's difficult to make those changes. But I want to share with you this passage of a change that occurred. Now, it wasn't necessarily planned. I like planning, but this is one thing that, and I want you to notice what Jesus did in his response. And this is out of the Gospel of Luke, chapter 5, verse 18. And behold, men brought in a bed a man which was taken with a palsy, and they sought means to bring him in, and to lay him before him. And when they could not find by what way they might bring him in, because of the multitude, they went up on the housetop and let him down through the tiling with his couch into the midst before Jesus. And when he saw their faith, he said unto him, Man, thy sins are forgiven thee. Basically, these four gentlemen tore off the roof in order to lower him, the person with a disability, before Jesus' feet. And the reason I stopped here is that, it's not the fact, Jesus' main point is not that he was to be healed. He says, Man, thy sins are forgiven thee. And that's why everybody needs to hear the gospel. That's why our churches need to be inviting, not to be healed because we're different. We all are sinners. And we need to make it accessible so that all can hear the gospel and know that our sins are forgiven. Because knowing that my sins are forgiven is huge. And so our churches shouldn't be a barrier for that message. And so I encourage you to carefully go and methodically go through this DVD-ROM. And I hope it really helps you in your congregation to make real changes. And I pray that through this process and your commitment that your church will be blessed. And just don't forget the fact that Jesus thought it was very important. And you noticed Jesus didn't get on to the guys for breaking or messing up the roof. He did the first and most important thing. He told them about the message that only he could give and only he could forgive their sins. And that's what this is all about.